somebody down a long road about. Yes, okay, that's good. They know.
We're live.
Okay, I got you. Hi there, I am Danya Craddock, co-owner of the Doc Bookshop. I am so proud to be here. We have some excellent authors here today. She's talking about her book. Let me grab her book. And we are here today talking about Shatter and Shambles by D.M. O'Neil. I am so excited about this conversation. So gather around. We got people in the store. So if you're in the online community, gather your friends, your family, your book clubs, because we're going to have an amazing conversation today. Just a little bit about the Doc Bookshop. The Doc Bookshop is one of the largest owned independent bookstore in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It is truly a labor of love, I must say, but we enjoy meeting our local authors, our national authors. We're a full-service bookstore, so if you don't see it on our shelves, we can order it for you. If you take a look around the store for the people that are in here, we have some amazing items. We have home care, we have personal care, we have greeting cards, we have gift and novelties. And if you look to your right, that section has kind of been busy, but we have a Western section that is an award-winning section for the Spur Awards. The Spur Awards, and they gave us, a little donation, I would say, a little, just a contest that we won just for having books about Western writers of America and creating a space for those authors. So we are happy that you're here today, and I am going to turn it over to D.M. O'Neil and her special guest. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm BJ Sloan, and it's my honor to introduce the author today, Michelle D.M. O'Neil. And she is a native Fort Worthian and also a graduate of Eastern Hills High, which is close by here, and Texas Women's University. She has worked in forensic science for 35 years, and she's currently the chair of the Southwest Association for Forensic Scientists. And she's going to read to us a short excerpt from her book, Shattered. Shattered. Shattered.
Can we do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This starts out chapter 1. Carla was making good time, breaking her personal best would be a great start for the new millennium. She'd waited patiently for the first warm Saturday to get back in the saddle. The long ribbon of road where that 30-mile record was set stretched beyond her view. A lone cyclist on the desolate frontage road of Loop 820. Wind against sweat cooled her skin. The solitude cleared her thoughts. No distractions. She lifted her butt out of the seat, standing high on the pedals, ready to pump up speed to make the hill ahead. On the first downshift, she let the camelback mouthpiece slip from her lips. That's when she saw it, low in her peripheral vision, a human skull. Slowing after topping the hill, her curiosity and conscience convinced her to confirm her eyes had not deceived her. The athlete's best would not be broken today. Break. The crime scene photographer picked up his tinted markers and looked at Hernandez. I'm done. He pulled the strap from around his neck, holding the camera in his left hand. He extended his right, shielding the morning sun behind the tall man on the embankment. It's been a while, Sam. How are you? Hey, Brian. I've had better days. Sam acknowledged Hernandez by nodding in his direction at the bottom of the steep slope. Yeah, I know what you mean, especially if this is who we think it is. The slippery, damp dirt proved difficult to maneuver, and he accepted a tug up from Sam. I wish it were under better circumstances. He hiked up the incline to the van and hollered back. The doc is on her way. Sam Miller was dreading this day. He pinched the bridge of his nose and let out a sigh. In his 62 years, he'd seen more than his fair share of the aftermath of sad tragedies. The worst, most inhumane things people do to one another, but never this close to home. His reward, family members in their deepest pit of their sorrow often thanked him for doing his job. He grieved for their loss, but none like this. This caused him physical, heart-wrenching pain, the pain he'd need to set aside before telling her. He brushed away the thoughts and ever-thinning strands of peppered gray hair from his forehead as he sidestepped down the hill. Detective Hernandez squatted beside the mostly skeletonized remains, straightened a weathered jacket before Sam could suggest he not remove anything until the anthropologist arrived. Hernandez reached into the back pocket of the disintegrating khaki pants. Gloved fingers slipped the driver's license from the wallet and handed it up. Sam took it inside. He hated working scenes with Hernandez. The detective refused to follow protocols and skated reprimands even after complaints were filed, each time more empowered, sustaining his belief that he, a Fort Worth police detective, was above the rules of the fray. It's him. I don't need an ID to know. Sam recognized the blue and gray cowboy pullover with a green stitched up tear on the upper left arm. In the preceding 4 months, his mother repeatedly described the location of the rip, apologetically recounting her best efforts to mend it with purplish pink or green embroidery thread. He recalled her saying more than once, "It was all I had, green or fuchsia. I don't sew, but I did the best I could." His uncle gave it to him for Christmas and he wanted to wear it that day. My mother promised to mend it proper before he went back to the university. The memory of it drew stifled chuckle with her sobs. Connor said it was a symbol of the cowboys, like Frankenstein, trying to sew bits and pieces together to make a decent team. Good Lord, a woman's voice rang out above them. It's no wonder this stayed hidden for so long. She stood at the edge of the road. You can't see a damn thing from up there. Dr. Elizabeth Williams was a forensic anthropologist for Tarrant and the contiguous counties. One of only a handful in the nation, she was overworked and in times like this definitely underpaid. The warm days of spring made for the discovery of more field work than humanly possible. Her volunteer team consisted of 2 graduate students. They followed her, carrying Home Depot buckets draped with aprons full of trowels and holding crumb brooms and leather gloves. "Liz, we're about to give up on seeing you today," Hernandez stood. Liz scoffed. "Hey, Sam." She despised the cocky little detective, too. "We were not," Sam said softly and put a hand on her shoulder. "It's him." "Oh, Sam, I'm so sorry." Liz laid a hand on his and gave it a pat. She circled in a wide path around the body. "No visible broken bones, and I don't notice any bullet holes," Hernandez offered his unsolicited opinion. "Looks like small animals absconded with the fingers and toes." Liz spotted a black high-top tennis shoe in the distance. She kept silent. "I guess I'll leave it to you then. I've got a notification to make." He brushed past Sam. Sam snatched his wrist and held it firm. "No, you don't." He stared into the cop's eyes. "I'll be the one to tell her." The threat was understood. Hernandez climbed the hill, defeated. Sam looked at the familiar face on the license, frozen in time, forever young. Then to the blonde hair mass and near bare bones in front of him. Grass protruded the ribs and larder beetles clustered, dining on the bits of remaining flesh. The mandible lay to the right of the young man's skull, where bare twigs halted its movement further downhill. Sam lifted his mobile phone high to gauge its reception and pushed number 3. "It's time. Get her to a safe spot, away from the media." He pocketed the little Nokia. He knelt. The faint peppery fragrance of Johnson grass accompanied an equivalent stench of decomposition. It filled Sam's nostrils and would forever accompany the memory of the immeasurable heartbreak he would soon inflict.
Wow, thank you, Michelle. Now, if discovering a body, particularly somebody you know, doesn't intrigue you to go on to the book, I don't know what would. Shattered is your second book, Michelle. Can you tell us a little bit about what sparked the idea?
Well, once I wrote Shambles, the first book, and people read it, I got really good reviews on Amazon. People were like, "This should be a movie." And then I started getting people asking me, "What happens now? What happens to Megan Brooks, who's the main character now?" I never had any intentions of writing a sequel, but so I put down what I was working on, which was, let's see, as I put it, I set aside Steel Magnolias, joined the Yaya Sisterhood while dining on fried green tomatoes story to write the sequel, now called Shattered.
Well, now, you've been a forensic scientist for 35 years, so how did your background play into the story?
In this story, I used a lot of the forensic science I know. I've worked drug cases. I helped on reconstruction of homicide scenes. I worked crime scenes. I helped dig up bodies with our anthropologist. And just all fell into place that that's where I should go with this.
Just normal everyday stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Shattered has some of the same characters as your first book, Shambles. Some of the same, some are different. Tell us a bit about Megan, your protagonist.
Well, okay, so they say when you write your first book, it's actually an autobiographical fiction. So it's kind of what it is, although there's stuff in there that I did not do, but I just embellished on it. Megan she's a crime scene investigator, works in a drug lab, a forensic drug lab, not a drug lab. And she's a single parent, and she's raised these kids, and her oldest one goes missing, and so she's just determined to find out what happened to her.
Heartbroken too.
Yes.
What happens to set her on her mission to find her son's killer?
Well, even though she's dating a cop in the book, it seems to her like the police department really doesn't want to do anything. He's a teenage boy. He's gone missing. He's probably just run off with, a girl or whatever. So they really don't put any effort into investigating where he is or what's happened to him. So that's what makes her decide to go on her own.
And Megan was married before. And how did the fact that she was married, she's a single mom now, how does that shape her feelings toward her two sons?
Well, Megan was actually married twice before. Her first husband was a functioning, emotionally abusive alcoholic, and so that marriage ran its course. And then the second marriage was to a con man who became a fugitive and left her owing a lot of money. And so she's raising her two sons to be more like her brothers and be respectable and respect women.
And T-Bay, tell us about T-Bay character.
T-Bay is her crutch. He is her boyfriend that comes along in this book. He's in love with her, and she never can quite trust another man enough to actually fall in love with him, but she does care for him a lot. And the character of T-Bay is actually based on Herschel T-Bay, who was the commander over the Tarrant County Narcotics Task Force here in Fort Worth. He's no longer with us. I didn't know him well, but I did know him to be a very kind, gentle, just a great overall guy.
And there's a dark character named Rick in the book. Tell us a little about Rick,
Well,
other than this guy.
he's here because in order to get him to come here in person, he would charge $200,000. So I figured I'll just get a poster of him and bring it here because this is Rick. This is what Rick looks like. And so you could see how Megan would just be so happy that this is the person she has to seduce to find out what happened to her son. But she doesn't always trust him that much. But Rick is a dark character. He has a dark past, but he's really a victim of circumstance, of a crime. He did commit some crimes, but her heart goes out to him.
And she has like a bad boy attachment to Rick. Why?
Well, look at him. And he intrigues her, and she knows she intrigues him too.
One of my favorite thing about the book is you have a lot of local color, and you talk about places around Fort Worth area that I recognize and know. So tell us about your research there.
Well, I did grow up in Fort Worth, and all around Tarrant County. Actually, we moved 16 times before I graduated high school. And so it just seemed natural they say, write what you know. And so that's what I know is this area. I did a lot of research for this book. Other than my own knowledge in forensics, I also talked to members of the Aryan Brotherhood, motorcycle gangs, detectives, cops, lawyers. And I also, in this book, it really goes kind of down a dark path. And so one of those things was a taboo subject of swingers clubs and BDSM dungeon. And so I went and visited there and talked to the owners of 2 local clubs. And so I found out a lot of information.
Wow. She's a brave woman. Well, Megan has a lot of ingenuity in this when she searches for her son's killer. Where does that come from?
It comes from the fact that nobody's going to rescue her. In Shambles, she had Hap, and he dies at the end of Shambles. Surprise, surprise. But there's nobody for her to count on. Her father has abandoned her when she was younger. Her husbands have abandoned her. She doesn't want her brothers to get mixed up in it, and so she's just determined. She's kind of the me I wish I'd been a few years ago, oh, many years ago.
Well, let's open up for some questions. Does anyone in the audience have a question for Michelle?
Is there a sequel to this sequel?
No, there will not be a sequel to this sequel. I'm done.
Okay. Steve.
So you mentioned that other book that you were working on that you set aside to work on this one. So now that this one's done, have you gone back to working on that other idea? Because it sounded pretty intriguing.
Yes, I'm probably a little over halfway finished with it, and I'm in a writer's group, and so some of y'all have heard me read some of that. And thanks to the DFW Writers Workshop and my other workshop with Carmen Goldthwait, I am able to get really good critiques, as with all of the work that I've done. But yeah, this book, the working title is Granny's Girls, and I just love the characters in this book, and they kind of are running with it. So I just have to write to keep up with where they want to go. So yeah.
I've heard parts of that, and that's my favorite. I love the characters also. Any other questions?
Don't you have a book coming out soon?
I do have a couple of them. I have one coming in November, The Forgotten Son, which is a story of a 16-year-old boy that is a coming of age story, and he grows up in poverty without a father. So that's in November the 5th. Election Day, can't forget that. And then next July, I have another book called The Unfavored Children's Club coming, and that's how people that have been disinherited can join a club and learn how to steal back what they've lost.
And I've heard some of that. It's really good.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Did you have a question in the back there? Okay. From
Actually,
Michelle.
2 questions.
Okay.
I have heard that proceeds from your first book go to a charity.
The proceeds from the first book, actually, for the first 5 years, went to the the University of North Texas Missing Persons unit to help fund families of missing or unidentified dead for their DNA to get in the database, so that those bodies could be identified and the families could have some answers.
Second question, is there a moment in Shatters, is there an aha moment where Megan's like, aha, figured it out, or, oh yeah.
An aha moment. Well, if I told you that, then spoiler alert.
So I'm thinking that there is.
Maybe there's a few.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
So your first book, Shambles, we see there. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
My first book, Shambles, is it was kind of a labor of love. I started many, many years ago, and I really do have an ex-husband who's a fugitive, and I was in a psychology class, and my instructor asked me, what would you do if he came back? So I was already working crime scenes. I was already, involved, and I just spun this big story to her. Wouldn't it be nice, And so after I told her that, she said, well, you need to write a book. And then years and years later, what I had written, I turned it over to my friend, the forensic anthropologist, who read it, and she said, you have to finish this book. So I did, and that's why Shambles was finished.
Very good. Go ahead.
Now that you've written 2 books and you've retired from your career, do you foresee yourself becoming involved with a group that helps to solve unsolved murders?
Well, now that I'm retired and I have written 2 books, do I see myself getting involved in helping to solve crimes? I think there's enough retired detectives out there who are working really hard on this all the time. So being in forensics doesn't give me the crime solving tools that would be needed for that. So I think I'll leave that to them. My goal right now is to be a good writer and get my books out there and get some exposure.
Wow. Well, you certainly are a good writer, and these are 2 very wonderful books that follow back to back, so go ahead. You have a question?
What advice would you give people who are just getting started in writing and really want to move forward into 2 published books?
Right. The advice I would give to people who want to be writers is write. You just have to sit down and do it and have that discipline to do it. I would also give the advice is to get into a critique group. That's been so valuable to me. When you first start out, it's like, this is my baby. And then to have people critique it and you just crushed because, they didn't like it or they had suggestions. But it's actually, it's a good exercise it toughens you up and it makes you be a really good writer. And especially when your critiquers are really good writers. So that's my advice.
Can you tell us about the everything you're doing to promote the book? Because I know you probably do a lot of events, right? But just what's the whole program you got going?
Well, I am trying to do a lot of events, and that's because I'm trying to get a lot of exposure. Because I had so many people say this should be a movie, this is really good, that I feel like if I'm getting that kind of response from people, then I owe it to myself, especially now that I'm retired, to spend the time to get out there and get the exposure for this. I'm doing vendor shows. I'm speaking at the library in January. I'm speaking next week at a library in Burleson, and doing events like this and craft shows, anything I can do to just get out there. And fortunately, the first show that I did, I sold out of all my books. So that was really nice. So, go ahead.
Do you personally have plans to write a screenplay?
Well, I would love to learn how to write a screenplay, but that's one of the things too. I would defer to a professional for that if it got that far. One of the things I've learned being in the writers group is that if your book is optioned for a movie, they have money. Whoever's optioning that book for a movie has money, and it would be up to them to see that it's written into a screenplay, as far as I know. And I don't have that kind of money, so.
Just wanted to know if you have plans to write another book.
I am writing another book right now, the one that's Granny's Girls, and it's about 5 or 6 girls who know each other since junior high school, and it carries them through into their 50s and 60s after one of them's murdered at a young age, and they're trying to solve her murder. But in the middle of that is one of them's grandmother's story back in the 20s and 30s, and she tells of all of these things that have happened, and so that that answers some of the mysteries also. I have written my memoir because a lot of stuff happens to me, and when I tell people my life, they're like, God, how does so much stuff, how many lives have you lived anyway? So I've written that, and I gave it to one of my writer friends, and she handed it back with a bunch of pink sticky notes, and I just stuffed it, and I haven't touched it since, but it was really painful to write. So maybe one day I'll get back to that.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
So what's the writers group that you belong to?
The writers group I belong to is the DFW Writers Workshop, and we meet at the Grapevine Conference Center or library, but mostly the Conference Center every Wednesday. Even if it's Christmas, we meet every Wednesday. And it's at dfwww.org. All the information is there. We also have an annual conference, which I was part of for quite a few years, and it's held at the Hearst Conference Center. And this year it'll be October 5th and 6th. And at that, we draw people from all over the nation, and there's usually literary agents, publishers, editors, all kinds of classes on craft and just the business of writing also. So it's really good.
Go ahead.
I have a question. So, if Shattered was made into a movie today, who do you see being the hero?
If Shattered was made into a movie today, okay,
Like if you pick your character.
We got Rick.
yeah, he's the love interest, or the kind of love interest. You know, in
So the main characters, who do you see them being?
Well, Sam has always been Sam Elliott, you know, but he's getting too old now. But now, I don't know if y'all seen 1883 and that young girl who narrates that whole thing. You know, because even if somebody walked in that door today and said, we want to make this into a movie, it would be 5 years from now. So this young girl that narrates 1883, she might be old enough to pull the part off by then, but I just love her. I just think she's a great actress. When I first started writing it, it was Julia Roberts. But she's aged out of that now too.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
What advice would you give to young people who feel like they want a career in forensic crime, forensic criminology?
My advice to people who want a career in forensics is get a strong science degree, such as chemistry, biology, something like that. You might need more than just a bachelor's degree now. You might need a master's or even a doctorate to get into it. But what I would suggest is in that junior, senior year, working on a science degree, is to do an internship. Find a forensic lab where you can do an internship, because the forensic community is so small, really, that you need to know somebody. You need to have a record, you know, like get the experience in an actual lab, so that when you apply for a job, you have that built-in experience. And that's true really with any career that you want to get into that you're working on a degree with, is to get an internship. Get your feet on the ground and get some experience, because it's going to be a lot easier to get hired in one of those positions when they come open.
And it's just like what you see on TV, right?
It is just like you see on TV. No. No, and we've suffered a lot, you know, being an expert witness. Most of my cases I testified on were drug cases or breath alcohol cases or something like that. But, you know, invariably I would have the defense attorney ask me, so did you do DNA on this plastic bag? Well, that's not something, I don't even know where the plastic bag came from. It probably was confiscated by a cop and then it was brought to the lab. So I have no history of that before. But they ask just unreasonable questions, and the jury now thinks DNA has to be on everything, or the person's can't be guilty, you know, so, yeah. Go
And
ahead.
it's not like on TV where it comes back in 30 minutes.
It's not like on TV where it comes back in 30 minutes. And I know a few people in DNA, and, you know, I never worked DNA, but it's usually a month or more where they actually have DNA results on anything.
You had a question?
Yeah, I want to say something. I want to preface the question. My experience of people that I've known in the forensic field tend to have a little bit different character and personality. What would you say to the general public would be the characteristics of an individual that would want to pursue the type of career that you have?
Well, the characteristics of somebody that might be wanting to go into forensics were, I don't know, I was an odd child. At 13, I read Helter Skelter, and I read the kidnapped story about the Lindbergh baby, and it was that evidence in there, like the wood, how the wood fit together with the wood in the attic, and how in Helter Skelter there was a fingerprint left on the back door, and the Tex Watson said he had been in the house 2 weeks later for a party, but the maid testified no, that Sharon Tate was adamant about germs. She wanted every doorknob washed every few days, you know. So it was those little signs that led me to think, that's what I want to do. I want to work crime scenes. I want to And way back then, there was no such thing as just crime scene people. It was just the cops. And when I told my mom that's what I wanted to do, she just shook her head like, you're just a weird child.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah. But I made it. I got there. And I it was a struggle, but I got to be a forensic scientist for 35 years, and that was great.
Were there any women in that field at the time?
Oh, no. When I first started, I started working for a private forensic lab when I was still in college. And there were other part-time workers in the lab that were also working on science degrees, but they just wanted to do blood work or whatever. And so I volunteered to be on the crime scene team, but I was the only female that was out there working, horrendous murder scenes or decomposed bodies or whatever. And the men cops would try to make it worse on me. They would try to make me sick and I never let them win. I just said, this is a job I have to do. I'm going to get it done, and I'm earning my stripes, and so that's what I did.
Fantastic story. Let's give Michelle a hand. I'm sorry, you had a question?
Well, you already talked about this, but I can get in and out. But the cover. You already talked about the covers. Did you think about
The covers? Oh,
of Shattered?
yeah. Can I talk about
Did you
this?
pick that? Yeah, did you pick that cover? Did you already talk about that?
No.
Okay, well, did you pick that cover, or how did you come up with that? We found your cover very interesting.
Well, I'll tell you about this cover first. This is a box, and in the story, Megan's father, when she was really young, made her a cherry wood box that said Magpie on it. And she's kind of a little thief, and so she had stolen things as a child, like her sister's barrette and some beads, and she kept them in this box under her bed. So that's what this cover is. This one here is actually not a crime scene photo, but it's similar to a crime scene photo of a skull that was found above ground. And my son kind of just made it look creepier. So that's what we went with. And so the guy who helped get this actually published, he did a great job. And his name is Russell Connor.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming, and Michelle would love to share our books with you.
Yeah. Thank y'all.
Do we have books available front?
There's some on that front table, and then there's plenty here.
And you're gonna sign some, right?
Awesome.
I'm going to end this. Oh, real quick, give them your credentials. Where do we find Michelle O'Neill?
You can find me at michelleo'neill@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook under Michelle O'Neill, Twitter, and Instagram. And I have a QR code.
Okay.
That the books are on Amazon, and if you just kind of search for DM O'Neill, Shattered or Shambles, it should come up.
And also, you can get your books at the Doc Bookshop.
Yes.
Alrighty. Thank you.